Welcome, everyone. I'm Bridget. I'm the Growth and Marketing Manager here at Relab. And our webinar today is about unlocking AI's potential in New Zealand. And we're thrilled to have Madeleine Newman here, the Executive Director at the AI Forum New Zealand.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the AI Forum, it's a community-led, not-for-profit organisation, stands independent of the government, and it aims to unite New Zealand's AI creators, users, investors, and many more. And today I'm excited because we're going to explore how AI can lead to positive outcomes. So we're going to look at some global trends, what this means for New Zealand, the importance of managing AI correctly, celebrating AI's successes, challenges, and then some insights for those that are keen to explore more. So, Madeleine, just to start us off, it's a big intro, but you've had a really interesting background before you landed at the AI Forum, and I'd love to hear about your journey and what you've worked on with AI abroad.
Okay, so I started my career in New Zealand, but then I spent 20 years in the UK. And of course, I say this a lot, when you go to the UK and you're from New Zealand, you generally have to work in financial services. So I worked in banking, but it helped that my background before that was banking as well. I did a lot of, most of the work I did was in the space of helping people use technologies effectively. So people, processes, systems working together, I designed some really large major change programs. And then help to implement them in different places that people in New Zealand, well, some people have heard of them, but most people probably not. And that was really interesting. And then about 2014, I started getting involved in new technologies more and more as part of that. So how do we work with new technologies more effectively in large organizations? And conversely, if you're a new technology company, how do you break into a new industry and sector? And how do you work with organizations that have been going for hundreds of years, or if not that long, at least a reasonable amount of time. And part of that work ended up being in the strategy for coming up with and helping to implement the strategy at the Financial Conduct Authority for how they would interact with regulatory technology, or RegTech. And in the process of implementing that, we managed to build the ecosystem kind of by default. It was what we intended, but it happened really, really well, and it's still thriving today. And it's that kind of experience that I think I want to replicate in the AI Forum. And it's all about activation, and not just talking about things, but actually doing things and helping people to see how they can use these technologies really effectively in their everyday life, but also in their business, and how businesses can make the most of these things. The last thing I did prior to the AI Forum was I was head of innovation and product for a mental health and wellbeing platform, and we developed a chatbot, so pre-generative AI chatbot, that was capable of delivering cognitive behavioral therapy on a personalized level. And what that demonstrates is that you can't, this stuff is, I've done it. Obviously, I'm not a coder. I didn't build it myself, but I was sort of in the senior leadership team that brought that into being. And what that demonstrates is that you really can do this stuff on a personalized level. There's no excuse not to. There's no excuse to treat people as an amorphous whole anymore. You really can get down to an individual level, and you can do this stuff for good.
Yeah. So how does what you've experienced overseas compare to what you're seeing in New Zealand today in the AI space?
I think that there's a number of people out. So some of the things I hear out there, because I do a lot of listening. I do a lot of talking as well, but I do a lot of listening. And some of the problems that people come to me with are not necessarily AI problems. AI can help you fix them, but they're not. Sometimes it's just the level of digitization that people have gone through. So then maybe they've gone on a digitization journey and not completed it. Those things where you have a project where you get 3/4 of the way through, and then you have to cut the budget, or things overrun, and you kind of want to implement quickly. And some of the problems that people experience when they do that is that maybe they've left out the last bit, which was going to give them actually the most value over time. And so I think one of the things I've noticed, especially in New Zealand, is that we haven't completed our digitization transformation yet.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean so. One of the things AI is capable of doing is supercharging technologies and things like that, and supercharging your capability as a human, and all those wonderful things, and the way that we use our resources. But but sometimes it's just a matter of connecting that API from point A to point B. with those systems, and maybe that's what you need in the first instance.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I was at a symposium, a Meta innovation symposium for APAC in Singapore at the end of last year, so just a couple of months ago, and the things that the problems that were highlighted there, or the things that we talked about a lot there, are the same across the Asia Pacific region, and I'm going to assume they're the same across the world, and that is that AI has a bit of a sketchy reputation, and so building trust with people and helping them to understand how they can use it effectively and responsibly and for competitive advantage in the right kinds of way, is a common problem that we all share. And I'll just go back to when I started with the AI forum. All people wanted to talk to me, it was pre-generative AI, and all people wanted to talk to me about were cyborgs. When are they going to come and kill us? And facial recognition technology. And that was it. That was what people thought artificial intelligence was. And there was a lot more going on at the time. It just wasn't being talked about, and that made it kind of scary for people. And then generative AI came out, and everybody was playing with it all over the place, and it became really exciting. And then they all got a bit scared again. And that's happened not just here but internationally. And so it's really important for us to rebuild that trust and help people to play with these tool sets in a safe way, so that they get to know them and they realize that actually they're not that scary. And if we use them in the right kinds of ways, and we have the right sort of controls in place and governance and guidance, then they're actually a really amazing tool set that can really amplify your business.
Yeah. So how does the AI forum, what's its role to play in that trust and digitization challenges?
So some of the things we've done in the last year, so the things we did in 2023 and carrying on into 2024 are all playing in that space. So one of the things that we that I discovered quite early on was that there was a big report done called the State of AI in Aotearoa. It was published in sort of September of 2021, and a year later nothing had changed. So it's pre-generative AI. Only 1 in 6 New Zealand companies or existing New Zealand companies had AI anywhere near their strategy, and that meant that they didn't have it anywhere near the governance either. So, and then generative AI came along, and suddenly everybody's using it, and there's still no governance in place. And what we suspect has happened since then is that some companies have gone out there and they've done some good stuff about putting some governance in place, but for others it's still just a bit too hard. And so we did 2 things in 2023. First of all, we realized that part of the problem was that senior leaders, senior decision makers in organizations maybe didn't understand what AI was and weren't comfortable talking about it, and didn't know, didn't have enough information to be able to make good decisions. And so we started to bridge that gap by doing masterclasses for that audience, where we took them through those things in a easy and relatable way. So, and that worked quite well. We're not a learning organization. We're as I was talking about, as I mentioned earlier, we're more of an activator. So the fact that we started doing these and they were successful meant that other organizations started to do them, which is fantastic. And that's exactly what we wanted. And we're about to partner with hopefully, about to partner with the Institute of Directors to help formulate their learning management system content around this subject. But one of the things we also did to support that was we produced a website, and it's called aigovernance.nz. You can reach it directly from our website, or just go aigovernance.nz. And that is what we've done is what that working group has done is taken best practice from around the world and curated it for a New Zealand audience. And then we provided some really nice use cases that are active in New Zealand currently, so that you can see how people are actually using artificial intelligence in New Zealand and how you can start your journey in a safe way. And there's different sort of aspects of that. So you might want to just run a pilot and just be safe about that. And you don't need to change your whole organization or anything big like that. You just want to run a nice, safe pilot. And there's a tool set there for that.
Yeah.
Or perhaps you recognize that your firm's already using it, and maybe you haven't got the controls in place that perhaps you should have. There's a tool set for that. And then maybe a bit like Relab, where it becomes a differentiator, maybe you want a really robust system that, so for people for whom artificial intelligence is going to be a competitive advantage, or something that they're going to put out there to their customers, or perhaps they're dealing in medical records or something really, really, really personal information that's really sensitive. There's this really robust set, and that would be, for the people who would be looking for the equivalent of an ISO certification.
Yeah.
So that all of those three are in there, and there's some experts as well that we signal there that you can read their blog, and you can maybe make contact with them either from the platform or going out via LinkedIn or something like that. That was our first iteration of that website. It's we're doing some more work on it this year, and so by I think June, July of this year, we'll come out with this. We'll add a whole lot more information to that website. But it's getting really good feedback. It's really easy to understand, and good from that perspective. So we're doing a lot of work in that governance space. The other things we did were about, and this is all about building trust and understanding. Where we did two other key pieces of work. One was explainable AI, and we published a white paper in November on that, using some really nice New Zealand examples again, so bringing it to life with real live New Zealand use cases. And there's a webinar that was the launch webinar as well, where some of those use cases, including one of the ones from Te Whatu Ora, go through those in quite some detail and explain them. But explainable AI is about what's inside the black box, or have you got a black box or a glass box or whatever it might be. Can you see what's going on? Can you explain how the artificial intelligence has made the decision? And when might it be disadvantageous rather, to be able to explain what's happening inside the black box? So what do you give away by explainability? And there are other ways to measure things like using things like outcomes and keeping an eye on biases and things like that. So quite a really interesting piece of work. It's groundbreaking. It's still being referenced internationally because there's not huge amounts of writing in this space. So that's a really good piece. And the final piece is around, there's other stuff as well. But the final major piece of new work that we did was on large language models. And we launched a pilot in November. We're actually we're looking to launch the paper proper probably in Tech Week this May. But what we realized really quickly with large language models is that if we published a white paper, it would be out of date within weeks, if not days, because the technology is just moving so quickly. And so what we thought we would do instead was, and Matt Enzor is the chair of this working group, the wise heads, and it's got some people with some very big brains involved, and they were like, well, why don't we just use the technology to do this for us? So we're creating a living white paper where you'll be able to use generative AI to query it. So the idea being that when it's published or when it's put live in Tech Week, that's how we should be ready by then. When it's put live in Tech Week, you'll be able to ask it to produce a white paper then, and then maybe 3 months later you can ask it to produce a white paper, and it will have up-to-date information in there. And so it'll be a different text, it'll have a different date on it, or you can query it down to different sectors. And at the moment we're planning to complete 18 sectors by May. So lots of really good, again, really good information about how artificial intelligence in this way, or generative AI, large language models, are being used in New Zealand right now. So you'll be able to hopefully be able to see your sector in there.
That's awesome. So lots of case studies for building trust and governance. And just playing devil's advocate here, why is governance so important? There's the obvious examples where there's people's personal details, but maybe for the companies that are just starting out, what's the role of governance for them?
It's staying on the side of the angels. So not everybody, but most organisations probably already have, or should already have, their own code of ethics or their own code of practice, or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not about throwing that away. This is about enhancing that so that it covers artificial intelligence and its use as well. I guess part of the one of the things that when you supercharge data and you supercharge and you add this amazing capability in, one of the things that comes out is that the inherent biases in the data that we already have, or the inherent biases in our approach to the data. That's one of the key things that come out. So keeping an eye on bias is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping an eye on things like in New Zealand, we have obviously treaty obligations, so keeping an eye on things like that. And if you wanted to, if that's a particular area of interest for you, Karai Tiana Tauru has released a whole bunch of really useful information on LinkedIn, writing about the principles and how they interact with artificial intelligence. So that's a really useful resource to go to right now. But outside of that, it's about making sure you stay on the side of the gods, and that you're not, so that you're not sharing, for example, IP in the wrong ways.
Mm-hmm.
A really good example is with AWS itself, and this was published in a newspaper in the States, so I'm not telling tales out of school. AWS are one of our members, but this is that's all good. At the beginning of the year, so Copilot's been running for quite some time in the coding world or the developer world. And at the beginning of the year, there was a big splash where the lawyers for AWS had taken the developers at AWS to task because they've been using Copilot, which is OpenAI / Microsoft product, so not in the AWS warehouse, to help them write code, help them write better code. And they were like, you do realize you've shared all this IP, all of AWS's, all this AWS IP with our competitors. And the response from the developers was quite smart. It was like, well, you didn't complain when we became 10 times as productive. And this is the tool set we were using. And so what that demonstrates is that even the big tech companies sometimes, haven't had quite the right controls in place in that instance,
Mm-hmm.
to protect IP. And so it's a good lesson to learn that if you're going to use this technology, buy a license, use a licensed version, switch off, use the safety controls that are inside that licensed version. So
yeah.
And if you're not going to do that, then don't share anything that you wouldn't tell a newspaper.
It's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. So and you can do that really effectively. So I've got I talk to people all the time about how to use these tool sets. How do I get to know these tool sets without actually having to buy one or get too involved? And it's the general consensus is that if you give yourself 45 minutes or an hour or so with a generative AI tool, it doesn't matter which one you choose. It can be Bing, it can be Genesis, it can be any of them, whichever one's most effective for you. And give it a problem to solve. I guess I'm talking to teachers a lot, quite at the moment, helping them to understand how they can save sort of half an hour in their day, because there's this amazing stuff coming down the pipeline in the world of education from generative AI perspective. But right now, if I can save them half an hour a day, that's gold. That's like half a day a week. It's gold dust to them. That they're, and they can spend that time building better humans, which is what they should be doing, not like administrative stuff.
Yeah.
And so the things I talk to them about is so take a simple task like for them a lesson plan, or a general letter that they might have to write, like or something that they repetitively write, like pupil reviews. And I don't know if you remember getting your school reports when you were a student, but I certainly got the same comment over and over again all year, every year. So it's not like they're personalised down to any more than, Madeleine, you're in my class and you were conscientious, or you were whatever it was. And when I talk about this, all the teachers laugh. But basically, so what you learn to do is put in prompts into a generative AI tool that gets you out exactly what you want. And there are a few key rules. So if I was writing a school report, I'd want to give it the age group. What sort of do I want to be? I would want to tell it to have a positive outlook, because you always want to be encouraging. I would tell it I was in New Zealand, because these are international tool sets. And I would give it a word count, because it will go on forever if you let it. and then ask it to produce that generalized, so for students who scored between 60 and 70%, this kind of, they're in this year, they're going to set external exams for the first time next year, that kind of thing. What would you say? And that gives you a really nice first draft of what you might put in a student's school report. Or if it doesn't come back with what you want, ask it to try harder and keep asking it to try harder and get that prompt really right. And what you're doing in the process, not only are you saving yourself some time later on, but you're learning how to prompt the right responses. You're becoming a prompt engineer, for want of a better term.
Thank you. No, that's it's interesting how much ChatGPT can handle. So that repetition and refinement is really good, isn't it?
Yep, perfect.
So we've talked a little bit about what AI Forum is doing for the private sector. What role do you think government plays in terms of AI innovation on the world stage?
So we have, so in the forum, as you mentioned, we're a member-driven organisation. 10% of our membership is government. We have 2 permanent government members on our executive council. We're also 10% academia, and then the balance is business. So definitely a business clients, but a really nice balance. So we get that view all the time. And one of the things that's happened in the past is that we've built, and certainly the last executive director of the forum, built really strong government relationships, and we're still reaping the benefit of that. So we sit in quite a privileged position where we're able to, I wouldn't say influence government policy, but certainly provide that. One of our key roles is about providing that story about how are people in New Zealand actually using AI, and that's the point about, one of the points about bringing all those use cases to life, and talking about how people are using it here, so that when the government goes to make policy or regulatory decisions, they're doing it from a basis of knowledge of how people in New Zealand are actually using it. Internationally, it becomes a bit more complex. So there are moves afoot for and thinking of things like Bletchley Declaration in October of last year, and there are other things just bubbling under now, where so generalized statements across the board for helping to ensure that AI is used for good, because there are 2 sides to every coin, right? There's a good side and a bad side. And I think the current government is more interested in becoming involved in those international groups and bodies and decision makers. One of the really nice things that I don't know that most New Zealanders know, that, or maybe they do, is that in every forum that you come across, there is at the moment there's generally a bias towards listening to Indigenous rights, and in almost every one of those global Indigenous rights councils, there's somebody Māori in there, because we're so far ahead in that space, and really respected for how far we've gotten into there. So it's really nice that there's a strong New Zealand voice in those arenas. Also, from an academic perspective, we're really good at this stuff. We are amazing. We've got we have some of the best research going on anywhere in the world. We are amazing, and don't underestimate how good we are at this stuff. And so we're seeing more international conferences come down here from an academic perspective. And one of the things that I think the government's role, and our role as well, is to help to translate some of that excellence in academia into the business world. And it's always a really hard pull, because there's there's different rewards in academia than there are in business. But if we can bring more of the stuff across, so more of those encouraging places like the Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of Auckland, and all of the other AI centres at the different universities around New Zealand have similar sorts of programs where they're bringing AI to life from that perspective, and also encouraging talent. So there's a worldwide shortage of talent. It's not just in New Zealand, though. It's a beautiful place to come. So maybe we have a competitive advantage over some other places, but there's a worldwide shortage in this space. Immigration is part of the equation. Then it's not going to be the whole answer. So what we really need to do is to retrain our existing workforce in better ways to be able to take full advantage of this technology. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to go back to school for 2 years. And what you're seeing now is a lot of, especially for management and people who are directing companies, you're seeing a lot of micro-credentials coming out of design schools and also universities to help people to get to understand AI and how they can use it effectively in their business and get them really comfortable with it. I think it's really important that people are open to those sorts of opportunities. That doesn't mean that, when you're doing a micro credential, I did one last year, the first half of last year, crazily. It's literally it's about 4 or 5 hours a week, so it's not taking out too much of your personal time, and they're relatively cheap to do as well, and very informative. And because it's all postgrad, they tend to be in you tend to be in a group, so it's really good for networking as well.
This is great, because that was one of my objectives I wanted to get out of this, was how do we give advice to professionals that are wanting to incorporate more AI into their operations. So there's these micro courses, and then where else could they find resources or make connections for experts in New Zealand?
So I would join the forum. I'm a bit biased.
You're allowed to be biased.
Most of the people that work with the forum, all of our members, or the majority of our members, are happy to volunteer their time to help other people, because it's all about promoting the adoption of AI for an inclusive, equitable, and prosperous future New Zealand, or future Aotearoa New Zealand, and they freely give their time and advice. There are other places as well that you can, we also know where, or tend to know where centres of excellence are for particular things. So if you have if you're in infrastructure, if you're in construction, if you're in manufacturing, if you're in banking, if you're in law, we'll know. So we'll have some contacts there that for real people who have practical, real life experience in this space, who can provide somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
So there's that, plus that. Find a safe space to play. And the other thing we do is we run. So aside from helping people to understand how you can interact with these tool sets in a safe way, like how we just talked about generative AI, we also run hackathons, and we run a hackathon festival across New Zealand every August. We use AI for the environment because it's a nice safe space to play in. So you can leave your corporate hat at the door and come in and play with the tool sets. You don't have to be a technologist, because any good team, as we all know, has a bunch of people with different skill sets in it. They always come up with the best results. And we do all the organising. They're hosted by partner organisations, so it's pretty much free. You take a look at the website for that one is aihackathon.nz.
Awesome.
So it's a great place to get involved. It costs $25 for a ticket, because we find if we don't charge, people don't have any skin in the game, they don't turn up. $15 for students. But yes, and it's run across New Zealand. And last year we had a team we had 4 teams actually from Fiji as well. So spreading out across the world as we world domination from New Zealand.
That sounds awesome. I'll get those links from you, and then I'll be able to send them out in a wee summary at the end of this. And we're getting close to time, but I did also just want to get your thoughts on the case study that we talked about prior to the webinar on the property hazard management. And that's just because I'm biased from Relab being property focused, but I'd just love to hear what's happening in New Zealand and how some people are applying AI.
So it's a really good example. It's actually in our explainable AI paper, so you can have a look in there. And Linker Analytics have what they did is so with the cyclone damage from last year, what they did is they took Sentinel-2 satellite data from pre-cyclone and then post-cyclone, and what they've been able to do using some really nice tool sets and machine learning and all those other really good things, is to work out and to be able to publish what sort of ground cover is going to give you the most protection against landslides, and what will worsen your chance. So, as it turns out, just from memory, things like gorse and broom and those sorts of land cover give you virtually no protection at all. It's the same as having grass, like zero. If you have pines, and that's why wilding pines are so you often see slips around them. Pines give you a 15% greater danger of slip happening, and tea tree, on the other hand, 15% positive. So good thing to keep growth. That sort of information, they're also currently doing some of that same work or same sort of work in city areas. So coming up with and that they're not ready to publish that yet, but that'll be coming out sort of in, I guess, the next 3 to 6 months. But that sort of information about flood risk and the risk of what happens when you have too much water in an area, and how can we protect against that? Really important from a property protection perspective.
Absolutely.
The other aspect. There's lots of other aspects around that. If we can bring, and this is already happening in insurance and in banking, where they bring together different data sources, like from climate, wave action, all of those sorts of environmental data sets brought together to help them to assess risk better for properties. And I think that's it's already happening, and it's certainly already happening in the retail investment area. Sort of for funds in that space using this sort of data, and it's becoming more prevalent in insurance and mortgages as well. You've been able to use all this beautiful data to help us to make the right kinds of decisions around property, where we buy and where we invest.
Yeah, and then how to mitigate the risk if you've already got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've got a risk, and that's that really important work that Link has been doing about how do we mitigate. So I live right by the sea, so I'm kind of interested in this stuff.
As we all should be. Oh, thank you so much. That's been really informative. So we're at time, and just appreciate you coming on the webinar.
No problems at all. If anybody has any questions, fire them through to info@aiforum.org.nz.
Cool. And I'll tee up with you to get those links to share.
No worries at all.
Thanks so much, everyone. See ya.